When I was first making short films, I was at the tail end of the digital tape age. I never really got to use tape much, but I remember it because of the excitement that occurred with the advent of the DSLR revolution in the early 2000s. Suddenly, these little cameras seem to be pulling off sequences that look like film. You think it's tempting now to buy the latest and greatest. Back then, the digital sensor technology seemed to be leapfrogging itself every 6 months, and taking the plunge on a camera could be a bit of a risk if a year later the new sensors could offer double the resolution. But thankfully the digital technology of the sensors has settled down, and with a good lens you could get perfectly respectable footage from a decent DSLR made even 10 years ago. Sure, you can bang on about 4K and beyond, but for small creators that aren't exclusively making videos about cinematography, 1080 enabled cameras have been delivering all that's required for more than 10 years. This C100 has been in use for 8 years, and we still use it professionally for interview footage and cinematic B-roll. There's better cameras, no doubt, but not so much better that the average viewer would tell. So why is there even a market for new cameras? Well, of course, it's not just about the sensor. The latest small cameras are starting to build in things that were unheard of 8 or 10 years ago. A gimbal inside the camera to stabilize images, Bluetooth control, miniaturization, 360 recording, as well as better sound technology in smaller packages. There's no end to reasons why you could still be tempted by shiny new things, but the question to ask is, what happens to the Best Buys of yesterday? Are they still any good? To test this out, we're going to make a completely unscientific test and do some time jumps to compare today's Sony a7 Mark III with this trusty C100, and then jump back in time to the 80s. I told you this wasn't scientific. To look at the Vivitar Magic 8 to see just how far things have come. Before we look at any footage though, keep in mind these were at the top end of the prosumer market at the time, so they're broadly comparable. Look at the size of them. The C100 does seem big, but it's really just taller. If you take out the preamp on the top, it's a respectable in-betweener size. The big difference over all of them is the reduction in footprint and weight. For professional shoots, that means a small camera like the Sony a7 Mark III is going to go easily on a small gimbal like the Ronin S, where the C100 is pushing it, and the latest Sony has a much more advanced facial recognition autofocus that picks up a face anywhere in the frame, unlike the Canon, where only the center of the frame works. Plus, its wireless connection to tablets or phones for monitoring, it's seamless and it doesn't need the internet. Do you see what I mean? These are the changes that are helpful for professionals, but none of them are game changers in terms of image. Having said that, it's a shame Canon's innovation of building in the ND filters hasn't caught on, which is crazy. But if you wanted to have a shoot off using the equivalent lens in 1080p, most YouTube viewers wouldn't bat an eyelid. And the C100 isn't unique. You could get the same quality out of a ton of cameras from 10 years ago that are only a few £100 now. But for fun, let's look at the footage out of these cameras side by side. Here's the Sony a7 Mark III with a Tamron 17-28mm, one of today's top prosumer cameras and lens combinations. Here's the Canon C100 with a 24-100mm lens from 8 years ago. And here's the Vivitar Magic 8 with me. I don't know what kind of lens that is, but the point of this very unscientific test is to show you that the quantum leap in imagery was over 10 years ago, as far as small creator channels go. Sure, the movie industry and high-end cinematography and photography-based channels will tell you it's all about this or that latest thing, and there will be different advances in 360 and AR that will shake things up over the next few years, but those changes are too exotic for audiences to take to them quickly. If your channel is about software reviews or how to make better lifestyle choices or even makeup tips, you don't need it to look like a single malt whiskey ad, so you can manage perfectly well with a load of cameras made over the last 10 years. If you've got an interchangeable lens camera that shoots 1080p, consider getting a better lens first. They don't get outdated and you can resell them easily. Getting a red camera or anything more expensive than a Blackmagic Pocket is completely nuts. Unless you're loaded, in which case you can do whatever you want. Why would you even be listening to this? You should be out water skiing in Thailand on solid gold water skis. Anyway, we'll do a separate video on new versus secondhand cameras, so make sure you're subscribed to get that. But here's some examples of affordable secondhand cameras under £500 that still shoot great footage with a single 50mm lens. Number 1, the Canon 7D. Number 2, the Canon 6D. Number 3, the Canon 70D. Number 4, the Lumix GH2, just thrown in as a token non-Canon camera. And the left field option, the GoPro Max, should get a mention here. It doesn't have the premium look of the interchangeable lens DSLRs, but at the same price range, it has a solid built-in microphone that records quality audio out of the box, which these cameras don't. So that's what might stop you buying an old camera if the newer small cameras start to integrate good quality mics into them like the GoPro Max has done. You might be right to be tempted. Because in the end, if you want a single device to do everything to an acceptable standard, that is, out of the box, then maybe one of those shiny new things is worth going for. What would you add to the list? Let us know in the comments. The other elephant in the room that I've not mentioned that might just be a shiny new thing worth getting is when smartphones can do with video what they're able to currently do with portrait photos. That is, make a really impressive digital shallow depth of field impression at 25 frames per second. Basically, your average smartphone could be making footage that DSLRs could make 10 years ago that can literally go in your pocket. That would truly complete this lineup of cameras. You still need good sound, which is why I had to bring up the GoPro Max, but there are solutions at extra cost for all of the others. If this was helpful, then let us know, hit the like button and watch this video if you're after 10 production tips to boost your video quality, where I think I contradict everything I've said here, but most of it's still solid advice. Or this video where you can compare small creator microphones one against the other. And subscribe!